The golden morning sun spilled across the savanna, painting the rolling plains in warm hues of amber and ochre. Every blade of tall grass shimmered as the early light brushed it, moving gently in the soft, whispering wind. Dust rose faintly from the dry yellow soil, sparkling like tiny particles of gold in the sun's first rays. In this quiet, the world seemed at peace, as if the entire savanna had paused for a single, golden heartbeat. A small lion cub, barely more than a few months old, tumbled clumsily at the edge of the swaying grass, its soft paws sinking slightly into the warm earth. The cub's fur glowed in the sunlight, a patchwork of golden tones that blended almost seamlessly with the soil beneath it. Its tiny nose twitched with curiosity, sniffing at drifting insects and flitting birds, unaware of the eyes that might be watching from just beyond the veil of the grass. A few meters away, the cub's mother rested under the sparse shade of a solitary acacia tree. Her massive frame stretched out along the warm earth, muscles relaxed but alert, eyes half-closed yet always scanning the horizon. The mother's tail flicked lazily, sending small clouds of dust into the air as she listened to the soft sounds of the morning, the distant cry of a hornbill, the rustle of the grass, the faint snap of a branch far off in the distance. Her presence was a quiet comfort to the cub, a living barrier between innocence and the lurking dangers of the wild. Every so often, the cub scampered back toward her, nudging her paws with its small muzzle, a soft, uncertain squeak breaking the morning's silence. The mother responded with a gentle rumble, a sound that seemed to hold both reassurance and warning, a promise that she was near and that the world was, for now, safe. Farther across the open savanna, a man moved carefully, his boots pressing lightly into the dry soil. His eyes swept constantly, trained to notice the smallest sign of movement or danger. Dust clung to his khaki clothing, and the sun glinted off the rim of his hat as he walked, slow and deliberate. Each step was measured, respectful of the rhythm of the wild. He paused occasionally, lifting a hand to shield his eyes, scanning the horizon for predators or threats that could disrupt the fragile balance of life here. Though human, he understood the rules of this land. The savanna demanded patience, quiet, and humility. He was not here to conquer or interfere. He was here to watch, to protect if the need arose, and to bear witness to the delicate interplay of life that had persisted here for millennia. The morning was almost too still. Even the wind seemed hesitant, a gentle sigh through the long grass that barely disturbed the golden waves. The cub pounced on a grasshopper, paws striking the ground with a soft thud, and leaped with playful determination, tumbling into a small clump of dirt before righting itself. Its tiny roars were high-pitched and uncertain, a mix of excitement and inexperience, echoing across the flat landscape. The mother's eyes flicked toward the sound, a shadow of concern passing over her face before she allowed herself to relax again. The rhythm of the day was one of innocent play, quiet observation, and small, natural lessons in patience and survival. But the savanna was never entirely safe. From deep within a distant patch of bushes, a faint rustle whispered across the dry soil. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to those untrained in the ways of the wild, but it carried the weight of unseen intent. A predator, perhaps hidden beneath the long grass, shifted its weight. Its muscles coiled and flexed in readiness, senses straining toward the sounds of life in the open. Even the birds seemed to notice, their brief flutters of wings and nervous calls punctuating the tension. The man's hand instinctively brushed toward the small utility belt at his waist, though he remained calm, knowing that patience and observation were as crucial as speed and strength. He had learned to read the savanna like a book, understanding its silences as much as its noises. Meanwhile, the cub wandered farther from the comforting shadow of its mother. Its eyes, bright and filled with wonder, caught sight of a bright butterfly dancing in the air. The cub leapt clumsily toward it, missing entirely, but the motion carried it closer to the edge of the grass and farther into vulnerability. The mother's gaze sharpened, muscles tensing imperceptibly beneath her tawny coat. She rose slightly, shifting her weight to prepare for any sudden move, her instincts honed through months of guiding this small life through the endless dangers of the wild. In that quiet, tense moment, the savannah felt alive with possibility and peril, the golden light glinting off the soil and the creatures alike, as if the day itself was holding its breath. The man's approach remained cautious but deliberate. He stopped to watch the cub, recognizing the delicate dance unfolding between play and danger. His eyes narrowed slightly, reading the cues of movement, the tension in the mother's shoulders, the way the cub's tail flicked nervously with every new sound. There was a story here, unspoken yet vivid, written in fur, grass, dust, and sunlight. He knew the moment would pass, or it might not. The balance of the savannah was fragile, held together by instincts, timing, and the careful observation of those who understood its rhythms. From somewhere far off, the faint call of another animal echoed, a low growl or a distant roar carried on the wind. The cub froze mid-step, ears swiveling, nose twitching as the scent of the unknown reached it. Its playful innocence began to give way to a spark of caution, yet it remained unaware of the full danger waiting beyond the grass. The mother shifted, muscles rippling under tawny fur, eyes locked on a point beyond the horizon that only she could perceive. The savannah had begun its quiet warning, subtle but unmistakable, a reminder that life here was as beautiful as it was unforgiving. In this golden morning, the scene held both serenity and tension, innocence and foreshadowed peril. The wind carried dust, the sounds of life, and the faint hint of threat all at once. The cub continued its playful exploration, the mother remained vigilant, and the man moved slowly across the soil, a quiet observer, a potential guardian. Each element of the savannah, the light, the soil, the distant rustle, the golden fur, was part of a cinematic tapestry, a living story about to unfold. The calm before the storm had settled across the plains, but it could not last forever. As the sun climbed higher, the shadows lengthened and shifted, the air warming with the day. A soft breeze carried the scents of grass, soil, and distant waterholes, a mixture of life and latent danger. The cub pawed at a small stone, oblivious to the gaze of its mother and the distant predator. The man stopped again, taking in the full expanse of the savannah, feeling the weight of responsibility settle like the heat on the yellow soil. The world seemed paused, balanced on the edge of motion and stillness, innocence and threat. For this brief, golden moment, the savannah held its breath, and the story of life, survival, and courage began to stir quietly beneath the sun's gentle light. The calm of the morning shattered in an instant. A rustle in the tall grass, almost imperceptible moments before, erupted into a violent blur of motion. The lion cub yelped, paws scrabbling against the dry yellow soil as a shadow leapt from the underbrush. Claws scraped and teeth snapped in a horrifying, sudden attack that sent dust spiraling into the golden sunlight. The cub tumbled, tiny body twisting in panic, its high-pitched roars cutting across the open savannah like a warning bell. Every instinct screamed danger, but the cub was too small, too inexperienced to fight. Fear flooded its eyes, pupils wide, whiskers quivering, and the world became a chaotic blur of grass, claws, and sunlight. The man's heart surged with adrenaline. He had seen danger in the wild before, but nothing compared to the urgency of a helpless creature's life hanging in the balance. Without thinking, he sprinted across the open plain, boots kicking up clouds of dust with each hurried step. Every stride carried the weight of desperation, muscles straining, lungs burning as he closed the distance between himself and the predator. His hands reached out instinctively, guided by a mix of instinct, training, and the raw human need to protect. The cub's terrified cries were punctuated by the guttural snarls of the predator, creating a soundscape that was both terrifying and painfully urgent. Meanwhile, the lion mother bounded from the shade of the acacia tree, powerful legs propelling her across the soil, muscles rippling under tawny fur. Her roar split the air, a deep, resonant warning and rallying cry, but the distance was too great. The predator twisted, glancing toward her, aware of her presence, yet unwilling to abandon the attack. Time seemed to stretch, each second a drawn-out eternity. Dust swirled around the struggling cub, tiny paws scraping, claws trying to find purchase, while the predator's teeth flashed in the morning light. The man's shadow stretched over the scene, a sudden human interloper entering the raw, primal energy of the savannah. As he neared, the predator hesitated. Its ears flicked, muscles coiled like springs, tail lashing the air. There was a brief standoff, tension so thick it felt as though it could be sliced with a blade. The cub froze, trembling against the predator's body, eyes wide with fear, ears pinned flat. The predator's growl rolled through the plains, low and threatening, and the man stopped just short, arms extended. His voice was calm but firm, a steady anchor in the chaos. For a moment, predator and human measured each other, instincts clashing in a silent, tense dialogue. The wind carried the scent of dust, fur, and adrenaline, blending the smells into the raw perfume of survival. Every movement became cinematic in its intensity. The predator shifted, claws digging into the soil, jaw flexing, poised to strike again. The cub squirmed, tiny body racked with fear, ears twitching at the sounds around it. The man lunged, scooping the cub into his arms, heart hammering as he felt the animal's small body shaking against his chest. Dust rose like a golden cloud, swirling around them, catching the sunlight in dramatic streaks. The predator hesitated for a heartbeat, then, as if reconsidering, leapt back a few steps, assessing this unexpected intervention. The man held the cub close, pressing it against his chest as he backed slowly, every muscle tensed, ready to react at the slightest movement. The mother lion raced closer now, powerful strides eating the distance, eyes fixed on the predator and her cub. Her growl was a rolling rumble, shaking the air with a mixture of fury and relief. The predator snarled again, unsure of its next move, caught between instinct and surprise. The man's breaths came in controlled bursts, every exhale timed with careful, deliberate steps. He could feel the cub's heartbeat, rapid and erratic, against his own chest. The predator pawed the ground, tense and calculating, but the human presence had altered the balance of this encounter. Survival instinct clashed with recognition of risk, and the predator's focus wavered, just enough to give the man and cub a critical advantage. The golden sunlight filtered through the morning haze, casting long shadows that danced across the yellow soil. Every movement, every muscle flex, every twitch of tail and ear was illuminated, turning the savannah into a stage of raw, emotional tension. The cub whimpered, tiny claws gripping the man's clothing, seeking comfort and security. The predator, sensing a shift, made one final hesitation before retreating into the underbrush, leaving behind a swirl of dust and the echo of a near tragedy. The mother lion arrived moments later, circling her cub and the man with slow, deliberate steps, muscles still taut, eyes scanning for further threats. The man knelt slightly, holding the cub against him, feeling its small body trembling gradually ease. The mother lowered her head close, scenting him, nudging her cub toward safety. There was no aggression in her gaze toward the man, only cautious recognition, a silent understanding of what had just transpired. The savannah seemed to exhale, the air settling, wind brushing dust into gentle swirls across the yellow soil. The cub, still shivering, nuzzled its mother, seeking warmth and reassurance. The predator had vanished, leaving the plains momentarily quiet once again, though the tension lingered, like a shadow behind the golden light. In that suspended moment, the man allowed himself a slow breath, feeling the weight of adrenaline drain from his limbs. The cub's tiny body, once racked with terror, now rested against him with fragile trust. He glanced toward the mother lion, her eyes reflecting relief and unspoken gratitude, a bond formed in the crucible of near disaster. The sunlight warmed them all, casting long, dramatic shadows over the yellow soil and weaving dust motes into a golden haze. The scene held an almost sacred quality, a quiet reflection of courage, instinct, and the delicate balance of life on the savannah. The cub, now calm, pawed gently at the man's arm before squirming toward its mother, exploring the reassurance of her presence. The man watched, heart still racing, knowing he had intervened in something far older and deeper than any human story, the raw, unfiltered struggle for survival, trust, and connection in the heart of the wild. The morning sun climbed higher, brushing the plains with warm light, while the tall grass swayed gently, carrying the soft hum of life that had endured countless moments like this. Dust settled back onto the yellow soil, and the savannah, ever patient, resumed its quiet rhythm. Even as the adrenaline faded, the man remained alert, scanning the horizon, knowing that danger could return at any moment. But for now, the cub was safe, the mother vigilant, and the plains were calm once more. In that golden light, the raw intensity of the encounter lingered, etched into memory as a story of courage and trust. The wind stirred gently through the grass, a soft reminder that the savannah watched, that life here was fragile yet resilient, and that even the smallest creatures could inspire acts of profound bravery. The cub's soft nuzzles, the mother's watchful gaze, and the man's careful presence formed a silent tableau, a cinematic moment of relief and reflection before the next challenge unfolded. The golden dust from the earlier chaos still hung in the air, suspended in thin shafts of sunlight that cut across the savannah. The cub, trembling slightly, pressed itself against the man's chest, small paws clinging to his shirt as if holding onto life itself. Every heartbeat echoed in the wide, open plain, a rhythm both urgent and fragile. For a long, tense moment, the savannah seemed to pause, as if the earth itself were holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. From the edges of the golden grass, movement emerged, low, deliberate steps that carried power, weight, and quiet authority. The lion pride had begun to approach. Their amber eyes glimmered in the morning sun, fixed on the man and the cub with careful calculation. Muscles rippled under tawny fur as each adult lion walked, heads low, bodies taut, tails swaying like metronomes of suspense. For a heartbeat, every instinct screamed threat. The man felt the weight of the moment, realizing he was surrounded by the very force of nature he had only ever glimpsed from a distance. The cub whimpered softly, nuzzling his chest, and he instinctively pressed it closer, feeling the rapid heartbeat under his hands. Yet there was no panic in him now, only a careful stillness, a silent communication of trust. The leader of the pride, a massive female with scars along her flank from battles long past, paused a few feet away, studying him. Her golden eyes met his, and in that instant, something extraordinary passed between them. Recognition, understanding, a shared awareness of courage and intent. The man slowly lowered himself to the ground, careful not to appear threatening, holding the cub gently while keeping his gaze steady but non-aggressive. The other lions circled, bodies moving in silent, graceful arcs, sniffing the air, shifting their weight, assessing. Their noses twitched, ears swiveled, and the faintest rumbles vibrated from deep within their chests, low tones of caution and curiosity rather than outright aggression. The tension hung thick over the yellow soil. Every sound, dust settling, wings of distant birds, the gentle rustle of wind through the grass, felt magnified. The cub stirred, tiny paws brushing the man's arm, seeking reassurance, and the mother lion finally closed the last few steps between herself and her offspring. She crouched low, tail flicking slowly, nostrils flaring, breathing in the sense of predator, human, and cub combined. Then, with a careful, deliberate motion, she nudged the cub forward with her snout, guiding it back to her side. The gesture was simple but profound, a silent acknowledgement of survival, of trust, of recognition for the man's courage in intervening. The man exhaled slowly, relief flooding through his body, like a warm wind. His chest rose and fell, sweat cooling on his skin, while the cub's tiny head pressed against the mother's belly, soft for brushing, across the golden light. The mother's eyes softened, a flicker of maternal relief, and she nuzzled the cub gently, murmuring the quiet, rumbling sounds of reassurance. Around them, the pride relaxed incrementally. Powerful shoulders sagged, tails swept the dust lazily, and low rumbles shifted from warning tones into the softer, almost conversational grumbles of recognition. For a long moment, no one moved except the wind, which carried golden dust in slow, lazy spirals across the plains. The sunlight warmed the soil and the fur of the reunited family, highlighting the contours of muscles and the tiny tremors of relief. Even the man remained still, chest pressed against the cub, witnessing the quiet miracle of trust forming between species. His own breath slowed as the adrenaline ebbed, replaced by awe and a profound respect for the raw, unpredictable beauty of the wild. He had entered a dangerous, primal moment, and yet here, against every expectation, understanding and connection had prevailed. The cub pawed at the mother's side, exploring its safety, and then looked up at the man once more. Their eyes met in a brief, unspoken exchange, tiny pupils wide with wonder and cautious gratitude. The man smiled softly, chest still rising with a rhythm of relief, and lowered his hand just enough to allow the cub to step fully back to its mother. She pressed a soft, reassuring nuzzle against him in turn, an almost imperceptible recognition that he had acted not as a threat, but as a protector. Around them, the savanna seemed to breathe again, the long golden grasses swaying in the wind, birds returning to the trees, and the faint hum of life resuming its eternal rhythm. The pride began to move as one, powerful yet unhurried, sweeping back into the open plains as the cub stayed close to its mother. They lingered for a heartbeat longer, heads turning, eyes scanning, before disappearing into the golden expanse like shadows merging with light. The man remained kneeling on the yellow soil, feeling the heat radiate up, grounding him to the earth, while dust motes shimmered in the shafts of sunlight around him. The cub's soft whimpers were gone, replaced by the quiet stirrings of playful curiosity once more. The mother watched for a final moment, then turned, leading the cub into the gentle folds of grass and the familiar rhythms of the savanna. As he rose to his feet, the man took in the scene, heart still racing, yet tempered by quiet wonder. The plains stretched endlessly, yellow soil rippling with heat, dust, and wind. Distant trees dotted the horizon in careful, sparse placement, their acacia branches swaying with the breeze. Life continued here, fragile yet persistent, each creature playing its part in the eternal dance of predator, protector, and prey. The savanna had tested courage, trust, and compassion, and it had left a mark on all involved, man, cub, and pride alike. He brushed dust from his clothes and paused, letting the moment settle into memory. The golden sunlight warmed the soil, and the wind stirred the grasses in long, lazy waves. Somewhere in the distance, a bird took flight, wings cutting sharply against the sky. The cub's faint calls of curiosity echoed softly, mingling with the rustle of the pride moving farther away. In this quiet, the man realized something profound. The wild was both cruel and merciful, terrifying and beautiful, and moments like this, rare, fragile, and fleeting, were glimpses into the heart of life itself. Finally, he looked out across the savanna, eyes tracing the endless horizon, feeling the weight of what had transpired. The cub was safe, the pride intact, and the plains seemed to hum with quiet approval. The wind carried dust and whispers of life across the yellow soil, a reminder of the delicate balance between danger and compassion. In that vast, golden expanse, the man understood the extraordinary truth of the wild, that even in its most violent moments, it could offer connection, trust, and redemption. The sunlight lingered on the fur of the cub and the mother, the dust settled, and the savanna, eternal and unyielding, resumed its patient, watchful rhythm. The camera, if one were watching, would pull back slowly, tracing the sweeping curves of the plains, the swaying grass, the lone acacia, and the tiny figures of life continuing in their timeless dance. A soft reflection settled in the heart. Courage can bridge worlds, Trust can emerge in the face of fear, and even the wildest places can hold moments of grace. The cub, now safe at its mother's side, blinked up at the rising sun, and the man exhaled once more, carrying with him the quiet, humbling truth of a life saved and a bond quietly formed.